All right, can everyone see the screen now? Do I see any nods? Sister April Morgan, can you see my slide? Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone else has up icons, so the icons are not going to nod. All right. So I'm going to slide this down just a bit. So again, greetings, and Sister Joan Phillips Bennett, I really appreciate that introduction. And your day has been very full. And so I'm most appreciative. And because I have notes at the bottom that I'll be referring to, I'll just use this format. And I'm hoping that the slides themselves are big enough. Amen. And if they're not, Sister April Morgan, because you're the only one showing your screen, I'll need you to signal me because otherwise I won't know. So I greet you in the precious name of Jesus the Christ. And I see my sister, Reverend Dr. Emily Pardue there, who will be signaling me regardless, right? That's just what sisters do. They signal you and call. I'm excited about being here just 1 week away from Christmas to share with you in a discussion about COVID-19 and disabilities, children with disabilities specifically. And I want to acknowledge and thank Bishop Ann Henning Byfield, who's the presiding prelate of the 16th district of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And of course, you all know that Jamaica is in that particular district. She was instrumental in getting the word out about this particular presentation, and I don't take that for granted. I really appreciate that. And the Reverend Dr. Marion Burnett, the medical director of the International Health Commission of the AME Church, who was right there at the Chapel of Christ Our Redeemer AME Church just this year in February. We were all there at the church doing medical presentations as well as sharing about disabilities. And in her absence, I'd like to acknowledge Reverend Natalie Mitchum, who's the executive director of the commission as well. And we want to thank our host, Reverend Florence McElroy, who's the pastor of the Chapel of Christ Our Redeemer AME Church. That's Jones pastor, amen, in Kingston, Jamaica. And of course, our own Joan Phillips Bennett is a facilitator who will have a master's degree shortly. And so we just believe God, that God will do something in her gifts and talents and will make a difference in the lives of children with disabilities and their families. So let's get on with what we are proposing to do today. Our objectives, at least for my portion, because I know there are two other presenters and I want to be respectful of their time to share it also. So we'll have a few updates about COVID-19 and the education of children with disabilities. I want to talk just a little bit about equality and equity and what those words mean to me, at least in terms of the provision of special education and related services for students with disabilities. I want to talk a little bit about access, the new normal that we're all dealing with in our lives, how to be intentional about including youngsters with disabilities, what my suggested next steps would be for educators, administrators, and parents, and also carve out some time to respond to questions. Now, I'm hoping that our facilitator is watching the chat box so that as questions come up along the way, that persons can put their question into the chat box. And before I turn the presentation over to the next presenter, hopefully we'll have a few minutes to respond to the questions at least. And if not, I can point you to an email address that will give us some space so that I can respond to your questions, because your questions are important to me. In terms of trying to create an equitable community, we have what we call stakeholders. And from my understanding, that we have quite a few stakeholders on this particular call. We have advocates from the Special Needs Jamaica organization, ecumenical leaders, connectional leaders, and clergy are on the Zoom session tonight. Members of Chapel of Christ Our Redeemer AME Church, educators, teachers, principals, administrators, and other kinds of assistants. We have students, perhaps grade school and college and university students, as well as other members of the community. And it takes all of the stakeholders to work together to create an equitable community where persons with disabilities can fully participate. And I might go ahead and add that in the Book of Discipline for the AME Church, during our last general conference where we met, it was decided that the term that we would use as a denomination would be persons who are differently abled, because we wanted the focus to be on what the person is able to do. So I will refer to what we have been calling persons with disabilities. It'll be persons who are differently abled. Now, a word about equality versus equity. As you can see in the picture on the left, all of the children got equal accommodation. They all have the same size little box to stand on. And you notice that the young child that's very tall is all the way up to his waist, looking over the fence. The one in the middle is still needing to kind of get his little chin up a little bit to see. And this little guy right here, he still can't see. They all got equal accommodations, but not all of their needs were met. This child here still can't see over the fence to watch the game. But in equity, everyone gets what he or she needs. The taller student did not need a box to stand on. Therefore, he can still enjoy the game without any kind of accommodation. The child in the middle has an accommodation that's working just right for him with the one box. But the smallest child needed more accommodations. He needed 2 boxes to stand on. And now this little guy right here can enjoy the game as well. What you see on the right is equity. Everyone is getting what he or she needs. Over to the left is equality. Everyone got the same thing, but it did not meet everyone's needs. So our focus should be on an equity in our community, that every child who is differently able will get what he or she needs. Now, I want to share just a thought or two about access. And as you know, Sister Joan Phillips Bennett said that I am a part of the AME Church. I'm an ordained itinerant elder in the AME Church, and I thank God for that honor to be able to get that accomplishment. That was, work and much prayer, and I thank God for it. But let's take a look at Mark, the Gospel of Mark, the 2nd chapter, verse 4. And let's reflect on this. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it, and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. And some of us know this story as the story of the paralytic. And there was Jesus in Capernaum teaching in a house, and it was so crowded that they could not even get into the front door of the home. And so these 4 men wanted to get their friend to Jesus. These 4 men wanted their friend to have access to Jesus. And so what they did was they went up on the roof, and as you know, they have kind of a clay roof with layers of mud and straw, and the men went there and dug a hole into the roof so that the man who was differently able could have access to Jesus. And once the man could have access to Jesus, his needs were met. Once the man had access to Jesus, his needs were met. So I want us to think about the things that we can do as members of an equitable community. What can we do to help persons who are differently able to gain access? Of course, we want them to have access in places of worship. Of course we do, because we want their spiritual well-being to have attention also. But also in terms of in educational communities, we want them to gain access to an education that will meet the child's needs. So access. Just want you to reflect on that. What are you willing to do to make sure that someone has access? Now, we all know that we're in the middle of a new normal. The way we've done things in the past won't work right now, and probably will be forever changed in the way that we deliver services, especially in educational settings. So we have to practice social distancing. We have to wear gloves, or at least keep our hands washed frequently and use hand sanitizer. And we have to wear a mask. Just today at the church where I serve as Minister for Congregational Care, we did food distribution outside. We all had on our mask. Even the persons who were coming to receive food had on masks. So that's our new normal. And we know that COVID-19 has impacted everyone, including children with disabilities or children who are differently able. And when I had the wonderful opportunity to speak with you in May, we shared these numbers here about what was going on in the United States in terms of numbers, and also what was happening in the county where I live. At that time, there were 8,516 confirmed cases of COVID in the county where I lived. And at that point, there were 309 deaths. Currently, things have shifted a lot. Now in that county, 49,194 people have been confirmed as being infected with COVID in the county where I live. And there have been over 1,000 deaths in the county where I live. Big changes. In the US at that time, we had 26,000 confirmed cases. Now in the US, we have 16,756,000 cases, confirmed cases. And then deaths, we now have 306,427 deaths compared to 1,216. So quite a lot has happened since May. Just a thought about our new normal. Things have changed considerably. These are the numbers that I just shared with you. Now, as you know, in Jamaica, things were a little different too. You had in May 473 confirmed cases, 56 recovered, and at that point there were 9 deaths. And now there are 276 deaths and 11,907 confirmed cases with 8,371 recovered cases. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord for the recovered cases. But we have a new normal now. There are still school closures across the nation. Some schools have tried to reopen only to have to reclose again. Different states are doing different things, and then different school districts within states are doing different things, which is making it very confusing for children, for families. It's difficult for people to start back to work when they don't quite know when the children will be able to go back to school. So with this new normal, there's more homeschooling. And so for those children who have the resources, they are using electronics so that they can keep up with their classwork. And parents are having to step up to the plate now and do a lot of the instructing to work with their children at home. It's a new normal. And now, as I'll share with you some of the impact of COVID on education systems. Buildings are closed to ensure the safety of students, teachers, and other employees. There have been funding adjustments having to be made in terms of federal funding to states and then to school districts. Some monies had to be funneled to allow for more electronics to be used in learning. There are even legal considerations. For example, some states ask for permission to utilize their special education funding for an extended period of time. They normally have a finite period of time within which to use their funds, and they've had to make extensions to that so that they could fully utilize the funds in the unique ways that they now need to use the funds. The meal programs in our country, there are what we call free and reduced meal programs. for students. And when the schools shut down, those children lost access to many of them to breakfast and lunch. So part of what school districts had to figure out quickly was how to get meals to kids who otherwise would not have anything to eat simply because the school was closed. And so in some situations, the schools packed up meals and put them on the school buses and had the school bus drivers to drive the meals to regional locations, and then parents and children met the buses in those locations to pick up their meals. And wherever a school district provided distance learning for non-disabled students, it also had to offer it to students with disabilities. So we could not say kids who did not have disabilities could get distance learning, but all others no. If the kids who were not disabled got services, youngsters who were differently able got services as well. And that was more like an equality issue. But if the IEP was fully developed and implemented, it was an equity issue also, meaning that the child got what the child needed. It was a challenging task, but doable. And every school district, I believe, is doing the best that they know how to do given the circumstances. But the bottom line is we have to be intentional about including students with disabilities in distance learning. We have to find a way. And the reason I like this particular picture is that it talks to the point that when schools are closed and non-disabled youngsters are having to distance learn, they're primarily focused on achievement, reading, math, writing, those sorts of things primarily. But when a youngster who is differently able is not able to go to school, their achievement in terms of reading and math, of course, that's impacted, but also on their individualized education programs. They might have occupational therapy goals. They may have physical therapy goals, speech language therapy goals. So it's more impactful to youngsters who are differently able because it may interfere with their ability to learn how to walk. It may interfere with their ability to do better with their articulation. It may interfere with their ability even to chew and swallow food if that was a part of their IEP goals. So it's across domains for youngsters who are differently able. So it's far more impactful when our populations of students are not able to receive the services to which they're entitled. So educational services during COVID-19, there's something in the special ed world called free, appropriate, public education. We call it FAPE. And that was a part of the 1975 legislation that it then was called the Education of All Handicapped Children's Act. Now we know it as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. But that FAPE is very profound and impactful, and FAPE is still to be provided even during this COVID crisis. So every school district is still challenged to provide FAPE in a new way. So we're having to be very innovative. Where services to students with disabilities have been delayed or even making decisions about how to provide services due to the pandemic, IEP teams must make an individualized decision whether and to what extent compensatory services may be warranted when school resumes services. That's going to be a big factor as we return to our classrooms, and we need to start thinking about that as school districts because, and I'll talk more about this in a couple slides. The reason this is important is that the IDEA provides for compensatory services when youngsters have not received services for which they were entitled. The school district has to look at compensatory services. What should they be? How often should it be given? Will it meet the child's needs? And so, again, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. Federal law requires distance learning to be accessible to students with disabilities, but it does not mandate specific methodologies. So they're supposed to, youngsters who are differently able are entitled to their services, but we can't say that it has to be a particular kind of method for working with youngsters with autism, so to speak. So we can't say you have to use the Orton-Gillingham reading tool with this particular child. We can say that the child needs reading services in the area of decoding, but we cannot specify the kind of methodology. And here's more information right here, and it's a public domain site, www.ed.gov/coronavirus. If you're interested in reading anything about coronavirus and education, including the education of students who are differently able, you can go to this particular link and read all kinds of information. Every time we update any guidance that has come from the U.S. Department of Education, it is posted on that site. And I'll go to the next slide. Individual intentionality. Parents, educators, and administrators are encouraged to collaborate creatively to continue to meet the needs of students with disabilities. Consider practices such as distance instruction, teletherapy, teleintervention, meetings held on a digital platform, that's your Zoom, your Skype, Teams, online options for data tracking and documentation. As a speech language pathologist, frequently I was collecting data. How many times did the child correctly produce the sound? Is the child improving over time? If not, what's going on? What can we change? So we've got to do a lot of data tracking and documentation to see if there's progress. In addition, there are low-tech strategies that can provide for an exchange of curriculum-based resources, instructional packets, projects, written assignments. I know in one state in particular, because the group of children that were being serviced were on a reservation, the way that the teacher arranged for a low-tech service was they did the old-fashioned homework packets, and they would go to the area post office, and then the parents would come to the post office to pick up those packets to keep instruction going for the children and written assignments. And something I just wanted to point out is that the way to approach this in terms of the provision of services, even during a pandemic, is to think about the layers that you have within your system. And so for our friends that are on the call who are from Jamaica, I know that our layers that I'll be talking about may not necessarily apply in Jamaica, but you no doubt have a similar or parallel structure within the island. In the US, the levels are state level, regional, local education agency, which we also call school districts, and local schools. And there should be teams of people at each of the levels within your system to help support the people who are trying to provide the services to the children, whether it's a teacher, speech language pathologist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, mental health worker, social, whoever it is, that there should be teams of people at different levels within the system, so that when the person who is trying to work directly with the child, whether it's by phone or homework packets or whatever, when they run into a problem, they should have a resource team to go to and explain what the problem is and see if that team can work together to help to resolve the problem. The onus should not be left on the practitioner to resolve all of these implementation problems right now. There should be a team of people who are pulling together to say, for the children who live in the southern part of the state who have problems with internet connectivity, we have to think of another way to provide services to them. What are we going to do? So that's just another way of thinking about how we problem solve within a system. If a teacher encounters a barrier, that's exactly what I was just saying, to implementing an intervention as designed, that means as in the IEP, then teams at each level can become involved. And if each level, if this team says at the school level, we can't solve this problem, it goes up to the district level or it goes up to the regional level. But there's a team of people there to help the practitioner. So let's talk about next steps. What should we think about next? Well, one day the schools will be opened again, and many of our youngsters who are differently able will be back in school. Now, unless it happens to be a child that's very medically fragile and they may need to be in a different environment. But eventually our youngsters will be back in school. And so the first thing I would think about, and I call these think abouts, is how are you as a school district, how are you or as a local school going to determine whether or not this child made progress, remained the same, or regressed during the time of the pandemic? So there's going to have to be some kind of looking at the child to see if there has been regression, and if so, in what areas. And how are you going to determine that? Are you going to do a full-blown IEP evaluation again? Are you going to do just additional assessments in the areas that you think the child may have regressed in? Or are you just going to do a teacher-made checklist to figure out where the child currently is once that child is back in the classroom? Because you're going to have to start somewhere and build from that point. So wherever that child is when that child comes back to the classroom could possibly be your new baseline for determining progress going forward. Because the pandemic created such extraordinary barriers to learning for children who are differently able, school teams will have to consider using extraordinary methods to get kids caught up. I'll say it again, the pandemic was an extraordinary, unforeseeable, nobody saw it coming. And it created barriers like no one ever could have imagined. And so what it's going to take to get our kids who are differently able caught up again, and non-disabled youngsters too, is going to be some out-of-the-box thinking, some innovative kinds of things. For example, consider extending the school year. If kids normally get out in June, maybe they get out of school in July or August. That's one possibility, right? I'm talking about equity. It's giving kids what they need. You may not want to have everybody, non-disabled youngsters may not need to be in school until July or August. But certainly our youngsters who are differently able, who have regressed, may need that opportunity to get caught up. Or providing special Saturday classes in order to help children who are differently able. I'm talking about equity. Remember the little kids with the different size boxes? One didn't need an adaptation. So the tall child didn't need one. The middle child needed just one box. But the short child needed 2 boxes. So each person gets what they need, right? So some children may need Saturday classes, some may need an extended school year, and there's something called ESY services, and extended school year services covered under IDEA. So that's another way to provide services to help the kids to get caught up. But the idea is as soon as the youngsters are coming back in the classrooms, you need to schedule IEP team meetings to review and or revise those IEPs, because there might be a need for a lot of adjustments. But those are things to start to think about, because they won't be in distance learning forever. They will be coming back. I just believe by faith that we'll be back in school sooner rather than later. So here are some more resource links, and I believe that Sister Joan Phillips-Bennett will have these links available to everyone to look at some resources that are out there for distance learning opportunities. They're very interesting, intriguing kinds of things from the Library of Congress and NASA, the Kennedy Center. These are really fun things for kids to do and learn from, and probably would be beneficial going forward to just check in on these sites and see what new things they have for youngsters to learn. Here's some more information about COVID. The Actor Center is for Young Children, Early Childhood Center. They keep updating their website on COVID-related activities for young children, as well as the National Center for Systemic Improvement has a COVID-19 site. So between these two main technical assistance centers, you'll find a wealth of information. And then next steps for you, if you're wanting to stay in touch with me and or ask more questions, I can be reached at accessgrantedtoall@gmail.com. But the website that I am still developing, and if you have any feedback for me about the website, just let me know. I'll be happy to improve it in any way I can. It's accessgrantedforall.com is the website. The email is accessgrantedtoall@gmail.com. So, Sister Joan, if you'd let me know if there are any questions in the chat box. I'm only seeing my slides right now. If you're talking, Sister Phillips Bennett, you're on mute.
We're opening the floor to questions, so
okay,
you can either post it in the chat or they can unmute. I've made it possible for each person to unmute. But one thing that I wanted to mention as well, based on your presentation, a lot of times when we talk about you know, differently abled children or persons with special needs or disabilities, we always first think of physical disabilities and, you know, health-wise, different disabilities that we can actually see. But most times there are hidden disabilities where, when we talk about learning disabilities, so even when you're talking about the IEP, there are persons who may be involved in the classroom, and let us say a student may not be able to calculate, or a student may not be able to read because of a specific, you know, disability, for example, dyslexia. These things are not talked about as much, so it's really good that we're tapping into really shedding some light on it, so that persons are more aware, because disabilities come in all forms, and it's important to mention. The person who is unmuted, are you asking a question, Miss Williams? All right. I don't think so. All right, so feel free to post your questions in the chat just the same. And as we still keep within the time, we're going to come back to each presenter just the same. And I will take note of each question as it's posted. Also, for the courses that Reverend Crayton has shared, I do want the persons who are on this call to post your email addresses. You can send it via the chat, and I will put you as a part of our mailing list so that we can send those resources to you, so that you can even share it with your network, okay? Because each one helps one, and that's what we're here for. All right, excellent, excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Crayton.
Thank you.
Yes, awesome. Our next presenter is Miss Morgan. So April Morgan, welcome, welcome, welcome. April Morgan is an educator whose career has involved being a mental health counselor. She's a special education teacher, adjunct professor, educational researcher, and a GED adult education instructor. She has earned several degrees, and she has done a lot of work with religious organizations, different organizations in the US. And a lot of her work has been done even in South Carolina. I hope I'm saying there's so much to say about her, but she is a wonderful, wonderful educator who is very committed to teaching persons of special needs. And it was really a pleasure meeting you, and I am so happy to know you and learn from you as well as an educator. So I'm glad that everyone here will be able to hear from you and be able to ask you questions as well, based on your talk with us. All right. So,
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you so much, Ms. Phillip Bennett. I hope everyone can hear me. I'd like to say thank you for affording me this opportunity to participate in this event on today. Also, thank you to Reverend Florence, who is my sorority sister of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and my family members, friends, my coworkers, and my supervisor. He is on this call today, and my sister as well. Thank you for joining, and everyone that's here. Reverend Dr. Crayton, she covered everything from A to Z, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that she said because she ran the gamut. But there are three points that I'd like to share with you. I'd like to talk about communication. Then I'm going to talk about anxiety and emotions that are taxing. And then at the end, I'm going to wrap it up with something that we do in our school district, which was a contingency plan as we started the process. Okay, so communication. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because it is extremely important. As a teacher, it is extremely important that I have good and positive communication with my parents. If I did not have a relationship with them before COVID-19 took place, certainly in March when everything shut down, that is when it would have began. But I did. I made sure that I had good relationships with my parents, because when I'm calling them and reaching out to them, at that point, if that was the first time that they were hearing from me, then I may not have a good understanding of what their needs were and things, you know, what they're going through and how I can assist and help them. So therefore, communication is key. Right now, I'm an elementary school teacher. I teach students grades K through 5 with exceptional needs. And I have to communicate with their parents. They can't pick up the phone and call me and tell me what they need. So therefore, their mother, their father, grandparents, aunts, uncles, their extended family, their step parents are the ones that I'm communicating with about their needs. I also have to communicate with my coworkers. As the resource teacher, I'm not the only one at the school there that provides services, but as the resource teacher, I have to have a good communication or good working communication with my supervisors, my superiors, my other coworkers, teachers that are providing services. Because if I don't, they won't be able to help that child or even help their family. So communication is very important. And for any of our parents that are on the phone or on this call rather today, if you need something from your child's teacher, I hope you feel free to email the teacher, or even if you can, pick up the phone and call them, because there might be some needs that you have that they're not aware of, but they're there with resources and can help you and that they would want to. Now I'm going to switch over into something else. I'm going to talk about the anxiety and emotions. I'm going to share with you all that when school first opened up, my anxiety level, as well as some other individuals that I know, was out the roof. Just walking into the building alone made me feel like the walls were closing in on me. It took a little while to get used to it, because when school shut down initially back in March, and then I live in South Carolina, so we were told to stay indoors. We had those orders, you know, people were not going out as much, and we were trying to stay isolated so that everyone could figure out what was going on with the pandemic. So then just being isolated, being home, being removed from my day-to-day routine, I started getting used to a new norm, which is just being at home. And then when I would go out to the grocery stores or things of that other nature, wearing the mask, wearing the gloves, making sure that I was washing hands, having hand sanitizer. But the first couple weeks back in the school, and even from day to day, the anxiety level becomes so high. And I'm not the only one. So now you're in a building where you're among your coworkers now, and everybody's anxiety level can be really high from time to time. Emotions run hot. We have to take care of each other. We have to be kind to each other. We have to extend a lot of grace and mercy. And I will have to say that that has been my experience, that there's a lot of grace and mercy that has been extended by both the parents and my colleagues that I work with. But we just have to be mindful of our anxiety level. And we are in a hybrid model. We're switching back over to e-learning because the numbers have gone up so high after Christmas break. But we're in the hybrid learning model, meaning that students could come in. There's a amount of students that their parents have allowed them to come in. And even when you're having that day-to-day interaction with the student, you don't want to be so anxious that now that rolls into the student and they're not getting anything from being there in the classroom with you because the anxiety levels are so high, and emotions as well. We have to check on our children, the ones that are home, as well as the ones that are there with us at school. I'm not sure how many other educators are experiencing this, but I know where I am in my particular school, I'm also teaching virtual, teaching through the computer, as well as the students that are there with me in the classroom. So the model is twofold. And then the children will feed off of what they're seeing and what they're hearing. So we have to be mindful of that. And then the last thing I'd like to share with our group is that our district, we did a great job when we came back in the school year to start back up with our children with the IEP. We went through a contingency plan, and we had to answer questions to know that if the students were not able to come back into the building, how were we going to make sure that they were going to get their services and how we were going to provide services. And there were a lot of hours and time that was dedicated to planning to make sure that the instruction would be there for the students. Everyone is putting in a lot of time and a lot of energy as educators, as well as some educators are parents and are doing the same thing. So everybody, like I like to remind everyone, this is an unusual year. We've never been through this before. There aren't any right answers because we're all learning as we're going, but that if you have questions, please reach out and have communication with your teachers. Start with your teachers first. And then if you have to move up and ask more questions, you have your principals or your assistant principals at your schools that are there. We want to help everyone that we can, but it starts with communication. And I'd like to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please post it in the chat box.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Morton, thank you, thank you. Any questions, you are able to unmute as well as post in the chat if you don't want to use the mic. So please post your questions. Remember, they're here to share with us, right? They are from different areas, and it's good when you can be exposed to different cultures, different ways of teaching, just to take a few things and enhance your own. So please post your questions. My question, Ms. Morgan, in terms of behavioral differences, because of the new normal, many parents have asked, and even teachers, because they have to do distance learning with children with special needs, a lot of times they speak about the behavior that tends to get out of control because there is a new normal now. So, for example, the routine has changed, the space has changed. So they are now feeling challenged, not able to have that control anymore as they used to when they were face to face. So many schools that may have children with special needs, many of them are not open now. There are a few of them that are still open, and we'll get to that in a minute, but many of them are still not open because of these same steps and the contingency plan, as you mentioned. So do you have anything that you can share in regards to that?
Sure, thank you for asking. I can share some information about behavior. So, of course, we know classroom management Some people are born with those gifts, others, they have to learn those skills. But you are correct. Parents are now on the front line as far as seeing the behavior issues that could come forth or could be triggered when putting academic requests on a child. And so I have had to have conversation with parents parents outside of the teaching environment on what we, because it's we now, it's no longer just me, I'm the teacher and they're the co-teacher, because they're there with the child and they're helping. What we can do together to make sure that the child is having a successful experience. I would just say from my experience, and my supervisor, he's here on the call too, he could speak to it if he wanted to, is with classroom management, I'm strong in that area. And the parents that I'm seeing, they're not having to do a lot of disciplining with their child when we're in class. As a matter of fact, the parents are kind of off to the side, just in the background, helping, because remember, I have kindergarten all the way through 5th grade. So if the little one needs some help, of course, their parent is going to be off to the side to help them. But I'm the one that's on the forefront with the computer, have the connection with the child and making sure that they're sitting up, they're being attentive, they're doing what I ask them to do. And if they're not, I conduct it just like I used to. If I have to get in touch with a parent or schedule a parent conference meeting, I'll do that. But I have to honestly say, I have not been experiencing a lot of discipline problems with the students, because for one thing, they miss school. They miss their peers. They really want to be back. I saw a few of mine this week, they just came outside the school just to say hello and goodbye. And they really are missing that environment where they can interact with their peers. So behavior, I am not seeing a lot of disruptive behavior. I would have thought it would have been more, but I'm actually not seeing that. And parents are relaxing more. They're more trusting. The parents are actually getting to see what we do every day on a day-to-day basis. And while it's definitely not the ideal situation, it's different. We are all working together. And I can tell you that that's a little bit different from what I'm used to. Because you could have been in a meeting before, and you could be explaining to the parent what you're seeing in school, and the parent would be like, well, I don't see that at home. So now it's just a little bit different. And I hope I answered your question.
Awesome, thank you. Shayon Horton, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Behaviors are not as bad. She's sharing that she teaches a middle school and there are just only a few incidents, and parents are now more understanding. Okay. Reverend Crayton has posted pbis.org for behavior interventions that you can use and supports. Mr. Chandler has asked, how do you navigate the interactions with parents who do not want to present their students to school to obtain services?
That's a good question. Thank you, Mr. Chandler. Mr. Chandler is my supervisor. So for parents that do not feel comfortable with their child or children coming back in the building, first of all, we have to respect that parent's or those parents' wishes. That just means as a teacher, as an educator, I'm gonna take those extra steps. If I have to call the parents or go by the home, not go in the home, but just go by, visit, see the child's face, make sure that they're okay. We do that. As far as materials that they may need, we either take that to the home or we put it in the mail, or the parent can come and pick it up. I know our school district, we provide the devices for the children to use. We will provide the hotspots. We also have lists of different counselors and agencies and services that the parents can receive for their child. And I also have to say that too, while it's been a low incident this year, here in South Carolina, we have Department of Social Services. And if I feel that a child is being abused or neglected, I would have to report it. And I've had to do that. It hasn't been a high number, but I have had to do that as an educator. So we do provide services, even though those children are not coming in the building. And we're also wearing our protective gear. You know, we're modeling what we would like for the children to do, to show the parents that when your child does come in this building, your child will be safe, because we use our masks, we wear our gloves, we have our hand sanitizer stations set up. So that's another thing too. The parent has to know that when their child come in the building, that you're going to keep their child safe. You're going to have the social distance markers in the hallway and spread throughout your classroom, and they're going to have their barrier to keep them protected.
Awesome, thank you. And a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Chandler. Awesome. All right, so we are going to turn to our next presenter. Just spot line. Here we go. Fantastic. Now, our next presenter, you may see I Can Help, but you will soon find out why. Now, I met this wonderful lady as an adjunct lecturer at the Michael University College as Miss Raechel Cann. She has taught me, because I am presently a master's student in special education. So I have always respected her wealth of knowledge and the fact that she's always willing to give, always willing to share with us. As an special education teacher, she is an autism specialist who is a strong advocate for the least restrictive environment and functional education. She has been trained in early childhood education. She has graduated from Shorthood Teachers College, moved over to Michael University College, and even the Missouri Western State University, where she did autism studies. And there is so much more to say about her. So much. But I do want to mention that she's the founder of I Can Help, which is a learning center for students with a range of disabilities. And as you know, my child has special needs, and she was also a student there. So disorders including ASD, for those who don't know what ASD is, autism spectrum disorder, intellectual disabilities, Down syndrome and deafness, as well as she's the founder of and swim instructor for I Can Swim. So now you can see why she can help, right? I can help. So Raechel, I call her Auntie Raechel. She strongly believes in preparing each child with special needs for the world and developing their ability to function as much as possible as independent and productive citizens. To achieve this, she uses a holistic approach, which I want to make sure I mention in teaching, which takes into consideration all the domains of development, including sexuality. All right, so I want to welcome Ms. Raechel Cann to our panel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips-Bennett. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you for everyone for being here and you know, listening to what I'm about to say. So thank you so much for that. Ms. Phillips-Bennett asked me to come on and talk about my experience and any tips I had for teachers or parents with regards to teaching online, because that's kind of become a bit of our reality. And we are hoping, and schools have started going back in person, but there are still many places that are teaching online, and that's their education platform at this point in time. Now, when we were going online, you know, everyone was very afraid and apprehensive about going online. I myself was very, you know, apprehensive about going online. How am I going to facilitate my students online? I'm a firm believer in positivity, and I had to, you know, cultivate that feeling of positivity, and then also spread that to my team to let them know that that's possible, because without my team, really I and iCANN is nothing. So I owe a lot to them as well. Those are my teachers or my aunties. So, in doing that, in doing it, and I think we did it very well. I think we achieved some good, we had a good online teaching platform going. People, they have this misconception, me included at the beginning, that teaching online is hugely different from teaching in person. And while it is different, right? While the medium through which it's being delivered is different, the process itself hasn't changed much. And don't get me wrong, it's much harder. Teaching online takes way more planning than teaching in person. And that's been our experience with it, because when you're teaching online, every minute, every second has to be planned, because you have to keep these children engaged that don't have this physical contact with you. You have to keep them engaged through the screen, so every minute counts. You have to have every minute structured. So it goes, there are a few key points that I want to talk about with regards to teaching online. And the first one is planning and energy. When I put all of them together, it actually, the acronym came up PMS, but that's not a very good acronym to use. But planning and energy were the first two parts of online teaching that I wanted to speak about. Because the planning is so much more intense, I feel, than when you're in person, because of what I said before. It has to be every minute, every second has to be planned. And when I mean planning, anything that you're talking about, if you go to a lecture, or if you're listening to me, I don't have any visuals up right now, but if you go to a lecture and you're talking, unless it's something you're very, very interested in. And even then, sometimes we tend to zone. We will zone out for a while and our attention drifts. Now, as adults, if our attention drifts and if we zone out, can you imagine for children? So typically developing children, they're going to drift. And now our children with additional needs, of course, are going to lose focus and they're not going to be as attentive. So when you're planning and you have your concept that you're trying to teach, it's very important to have something to anchor their attention on the screen, whether it's a visual or a GIF, so a moving picture, or something that's going to grab their attention, that when you're talking, it has something that they can focus on. And that's why it's going to take so much planning, because you might have to have multiple things. So you change the slide quickly when you're talking about something else tied into the same topic, to kind of anchor their focus to that screen. And I tie energy with planning because teaching online takes so much more energy, I find, than teaching in person. And it's because you become you become this actress in a sense. And I say actress because and these are things, I say it's not much different from in-person teaching, because even when you're in person, you're supposed to be very engaging, and you're supposed to have, various intonations in your voice, and you're supposed to be very energetic. But it takes double of that effort when you're online, because you have to be engaging them through this screen, through your intonation, your eyes, your gestures. Everything has to be that more dramatic to help bring this lesson across. So even when we were doing online, and I would observe my aunties, and even myself, I had somebody from communications, a public relations communication, come and talk to us about body language and things like that, and how to be more expressive, because that's kind of what we had to do. We had to get double the expression, double, how we speak, just so that we could kind of keep those kids engaged through the screen. And we spoke about body language. It's not a good sign if you're teaching and you're like this, or you put your hand like this. That shows that you are kind of getting disengaged, and we're going to project that onto our students. So even little things that you're not even conscious of, we have to start being conscious of, because you're not there to physically engage the students, right? So other than planning and energy and having that energy, it's very important. Sorry about that. Motivation is the next thing that's very important. This too is not much different than what you would do in your regular classroom. And when I talk about motivation, I talk about your positive behavior, you know, in the same way that when a child or a student does something well in class and you give praise, yes, you're going to be giving praise, of course, to your students through Zoom. But what about more, let's say, tangible kind of praise, reinforcement? It's possible that when you're doing something and you're conducting a class, that they perform well in an area or they answer correctly, that you can have your a video of something that you display for a few seconds on the screen when they do something right, and then you take it away, and then they go again with whatever they're supposed to be doing, and then you can show that video again. Now, I was fortunate enough that in our online classes were quite small. I might have had the maximum of 3. The largest online class we had was 5, and some were even one-on-one based on the needs of the child. Some of them would have to have one-on-one sessions. So we were very fortunate to have that kind of setup. So that we could really individualize their reinforcement or their motivation when they were teaching. So in the similar way, they would have their stars or what they're working for in class. It's something that you need to carry over into online, because not because they're not in front of you physically doesn't mean that you can't give them some kind of motivation. So again, we're thinking of motivation as very individualized. So not every child likes a Peppa Pig. A 30-second clip of Peppa Pig can definitely work, or a Paw Patrol, but some kids might like different things, and that's where the individualization comes up. A child might looking at a screen of fluorescent jellyfish floating across the screen for 20 seconds, or bubbles popping on the screen, or whatever it is. But that's equally important to bring to online teaching, as it is the lessons that you're going to teach, because that's a part of it, because you're going to need motivation doing online, because we're not there to have that physical connection and interaction with them. So that's a very important thing that we need to carry over from in-person to online. The next thing I want to talk about is structure. So structure is into 2 parts when we're structuring our online classes. We have structure for the teacher, and then we have structure for the lesson, which is a part of the teacher's role. And then you have structure at home. So like Miss April Morgan said, with your communication, which I totally respect and agree with everything you were saying about communication, you know, this time online has really, I think, you know, you were always supposed to have those relationships with parents before in your meetings and developing your goals and things like that. But this time has truly brought parents and teachers together in a way that I feel like hasn't been done before. And if there are any positives we take away from the craziness going in the world, it's those bridges that we got to build with our children's families, and how we were working together for this common goal of trying to continue this education through this very uncertain time and online. So thank you for saying those points. So at home, because we have to work on this together, because they're kind of like, they're facilitators now, we're not there, right? And while we'll always try to promote independence in everything that we do, that's always the overarching goal. It would take some time, especially if they had never done any kind of teletherapy or online learning, to get used to this, sitting in front of a computer, watching my teacher speak and teach, you know, and being engaged for the entire time. So parents being there as the facilitators was really important. And then setting up the structure at home that we as teachers would normally do at school. So that's like having their visual schedule, that's having their behavior prompts. So first we're going to do math and then you get your break, or first we're going to do reading and then we have math class. Having your rules and expectations of how you're supposed to behave, whether you're sitting in front of the computer, if you're standing in front of the computer, but you're going to stand and keep your eyes on the screen, or you're going to keep your hands in the lap, or you're not going to play with the mouse, or whatever it is. Of course, always putting those expectations in positive language as much as possible. And then also having that designated work area for your child to use during online learning. So I'd often say to parents that, you know, while it's not ideal because home is supposed to be this relaxing place where you get to let go, you don't have the demands placed on you, during this online time, parents have kind of had to have kind of encouraged parents that they have to kind of take that therapeutic and school structure, and they've kind of had to do that in their home, all the things that they're not used to doing. So having their visual schedule, having their kids check it, having expectations put up, having a designated work area, and kind of therapizing their home in a sense to help. So that's structure on the parent side. And then we have structure on our teacher side now. And structure goes into now with the lesson planning. So I already said that with planning, every second, every minute has to be planned. You have to have visuals to anchor with what you're saying. You have moving things to kind of keep their attention while you're speaking or while you're teaching. But also we need to think of the structure of the lesson in getting these things across. We're not there to physically model things, but that doesn't mean that we don't model things when we're teaching. Modeling things should always be the thing we're doing first when we're doing a lesson. So for example, if you're teaching, and modeling can go with anything, it's math, it's grammar, it's comprehension. Let's say you're trying to teach a sentence, you're doing opposites or adjectives, and you want to match it to a picture, and the child needs to put the right adjective in the sentence. So he wants to say the fat cat or something like that. You should model what it is you want the child to do and kind of self-talk through that. Oh, fat and thin are adjectives. This picture of this cat is fat. The cat is fat, or the fat cat. And you self-talk and you model what it is that you want your child to do, similarly to how you would do it in class, except, you know, we don't have that board. And even sometimes when we're in classrooms right now, I don't have a whiteboard or anything that I do, because everything is tabletop and very concrete, and lots of manipulatives and things like that. But in any case, there should always be that modeling before you're kind of asking them to do that on their own. So it's important that we model. And then we have to take into consideration how we're going to do our prompting after that. So we have some do's and don'ts of prompting, you know. With prompting, first off, we don't want our child to reach that level of frustration before we give a prompt. So yes, we've gone through the motions of teaching this concept. Yes, we've modeled, and we've done a good job modeling. Maybe our child still doesn't get it, you know, and that's okay. And, you know, many times our children aren't going to get it on the first try, and we have to be okay with that. You know, and then we're gonna do our prompting, and you know, there are good ways to prompt, better ways to prompt. If we see our child getting to that level of frustration, we should definitely prompt. We shouldn't play a waiting game when it's instruction time. If 5 seconds have passed and they haven't answered, then we should definitely give them a prompt, but we should still give them an opportunity to answer, because maybe their processing time is just slower, right? So we want to give them time to prompt without waiting to the point of frustration. Also, when we're prompting or when we're correcting, we don't necessarily want to do it in a very a stern way. I found that, especially online, that getting stern or getting upset or having a concerned look on your face when you're prompting your child doesn't help. And yes, sometimes our children have problems reading social cues, but in other ways, they're very observant, and even though it's across the screen, they can sometimes pick up these things. So you want to, in a playful, in a positive voice, in a playful, positive way, do your prompting, because it's okay to make a mistake. You're learning this for the first time, you know, so give them that positivity and that positive reinforcement, and give them the answer, give them the prompt, self-talk through it again, you know. Also with teaching, especially with, you know, being a teacher of special needs, it's very important to be flexible. You have to be so flexible. You plan your lesson, you plan this awesome lesson, you have your modeling, you have your graphics, you have your visuals, but the tool, for whatever reason, the tool or the strategy, it doesn't seem to be working. Repeating the question over and over in the same way isn't going to help anybody. It's going to help the child. So if you're teaching something and that tool isn't working, you need to be flexible, and you need to be quick, and you need to think of a tool to help your child come up with the answer versus just repeating the question in the same way. And, you know, other than just teachers or students with special needs, with, you know, mainstream kids, this is something that we should do. You know, asking the question over and over in the same way doesn't mean that they're going to give you an answer all of a sudden. It means that there's a tool lacking, or there's a piece missing, that they're not getting this, you know. So we don't want to be repeating the question over and over in the same way without giving them a tool. We don't want to be sounding like we're frustrated with them when we're prompting them. That's kind of contradicting, right? We want to be self-talking and modeling these new concepts for them over and over, so they can see how it's being used, and how to use it, and to learn it. Right. And then my final point would be with teaching online. So I've done planning, energy, motivation, I've done structure. One of the last ones I kind of want to mention is the not making any assumptions. You know, it's important. Sometimes we tend to take little things for granted when we're teaching our kids that this is a prerequisite skill they should have already, or they're here, so this must be something they've already acquired. Beginning any lesson, there should always be some kind of, it couldn't be an informal evaluation where you go over concepts or vocabulary that they might need to see if they understand what you're going to do in your lesson, because we're trying to set them up for success rather than failure. And trying to do this online is more difficult because you're not there physically, and it is a totally different dynamic, but it can work. I've seen it work. While our students haven't progressed at the rate that they would normally have progressed at in person, we haven't seen regression. So I'm saying to myself, that's a plus. We haven't seen regression, and it's just that the progression hasn't been as fast as it would normally have been if they were in person. So that means we must be doing something right. But with the assumptions, we want to make sure we're setting them up for a good lesson, where we're making sure that they have the prerequisite content and knowledge that they can fully participate in the lesson that we're going to do. So that should always be a part of whatever lesson that you're going to do, along with going over past concepts that you would have taught before, because that the going over concepts is going to be really important. You know, sometimes our kids, they have problems remembering things, so that reinforcement, that constant practice is going to be really helpful. So we should always take a time, like 5 minutes at the beginning of our lesson to you know, do our little evaluation to see if they are going to be able to be engaged and participate in this lesson, and of course to go over past concepts to make sure that all the steps or the things that we've been trying to build, the scaffolding is there, so that we reach success in this lesson. So it's a lot to think about in our online domain, but as I said, it's not different than you would do if you're in person. It's just that it's kind of double. Everything you have to do is a bit times 2. So your energy, your planning, everything has to be just more. And I think that's very possible. It's been working. It's just that it's double the effort on the part of the teacher to make sure that their goals and they're reaching their children. But I think if you think of these different things I've spoken about, the planning, the energy, the motivation, the structure, then you definitely have a recipe for some good online teaching. So thank you for listening, and I hope it was helpful.
Definitely, I think it was very helpful. Thank you so much, Auntie Raechel.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Auntie Raechel or Miss Cann? Let me just say Miss Cann. I know her as Auntie Raechel. Any questions? All right, someone is putting a point here. Any questions? Melissa, Pauline, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. She says, in my district, we record our live sessions daily and post them so that students have access to the lessons for 30 days after lessons have been taught. Nice. As a multi-categorical special education teacher, this has been a plus for my students. The videos are accessible to anyone without a code. I teach at a school where I have face-to-face and online students simultaneously. The videos have helped me inform instructions and the students tremendously. Thank you for posting that, Melissa Pauline. Thank you so much. And it's open to persons without a code, so you can always, I think she was going to post it here so that persons have access, I'm assuming. All right. Very nice, very nice. Any questions? I am really glad that Miss Cann brought up the point of not assuming, because that was one eye-opener for us as students for special education, because a lot of times we assume the student should be able to understand something and not really know the prerequisites to it. So I remember when you spoke to us about what exactly is the child thinking about when you give them a task. So for example, go and brush your teeth, and you're not remembering that this child is not just thinking about brushing your teeth as one task. The child is thinking, now I have to get up, I have to open the door, I have to go in the bathroom, I have to turn on the pipe, I have to take up the toothbrush. And when you list out all of these things that the child has to do, you're thinking now and saying, wow, that's why he's getting so frustrated, because he sees it as a whole list of things to do. And it was an eye-opener for us, because now we are not assuming anything about any child. I think that was a tremendous point. I love the fact that all the presenters summed up what is important to really reach a child with special needs, you know, equity, equality, access, you know, having a contingency plan, step by step. What is it that we need to do? Follow protocol, because this is a new normal, you know, having structure both at home and at school. And for online learning, of course, it's on screen. Let me see here. Online learning, it is on screen. Communication and collaboration, and also motivation. So I'm really, really glad that all the presenters basically summed that up for us as teachers, as parents, and even persons who are just affiliated with other persons who may have someone who has special needs. You know, you don't have to be a teacher or a parent to really reach out to someone with special needs. So thank you so much. Thank you to all our panelists here today. I think that I learned a lot, and I hope that our participants did too. And of course, the thanks are going up in the chat as we speak. Excellent, excellent. Thank you to Reverend Marion Crayton. I want to thank Mrs. Burnett as well for bringing greetings. I want to thank April Morgan for sharing with us. Thank you, Raechel Cann, for sharing with us. Thank you to our parents and teachers here and students, because I see some Michael family here. I also see some iCANN family here, iCANN Help family here. Thank you so much for joining us. I see some family from the AME Church here, from Chapel of Christ. Yes, Reverend Pardo, of course, always family, always family. So thank you so much all. And I hope you posted your emails in the chat so that we can share the resources with you. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to say a special thank you to Chapel of Christ Our Redeemer AME Church, which provided the platform for us to have this meeting today. Thank you so much to my pastor, Pastor Florence McElroy. Thank you so much. Okay, I see some additional emails going up, and I am going to go ahead and take them and put them in our emailing list. Dr. Osborne is on from our Michael family. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, thank you for the congratulations. Awesome, awesome. All right, so if there are no other questions, I would like to say thank you once again. I hope everyone, you stay safe. And as we post the different resources that you can use as parents and teachers, and we're going to be posting this recording online on our Facebook page, Advocates for Special Needs Jamaica. You can join our community there. You can follow us on Instagram. I just want to say thank you, and we'll be doing this every quarter. All right. So we look forward to hearing from you all and just sharing with each other to help our community be more aware and to help the stakeholders in education to, you know, reach out in a much bigger way. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Happy holidays. Yes, happy holidays. And do enjoy your evening and the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.